YouTube. All right, so my name is Shannon K. O'Brien. I'm an aspiring author who's currently represented by Shannon Snow, a creative media agency. And joining me today is...
I'm Gabe Rodriguez, or the G-Rod. I am a filmmaker as well as a critic and lyricist. And I have an indie film, The Sisters Cardos, which maybe you will have seen by the time this is out.
You want to see this film when it's out. Trust me, I had the privilege of being like one of the test audiences, and I freaking love it. Seriously, it's fantastic. So basically how we are here today, why we are coming at you, is because Gabe is awesome. He is one of my best friends, and he very wonderfully decided he would read one of my favorite book series. So we are here today to talk about all things ACOTAR. And a couple of little heads up for you guys. There will be spoilers for book one. And because I tend to have, how shall we put this, Gabe? A potty mouth when I get,
No, but I do too, to be fair.
When I get passionate about something in a good way or a bad way, the potty mouth comes out. So there are probably going to be some F-bombs dropped. And if that's not for you, I completely understand, but you have been warned now that, yeah, this is adult. All right. On that note, Gabe just finished the book today. I have read the series in its entirety once before, and I have been rereading with Gabe. The only thing I'm going to ask you guys to please not do, please, don't spoil anything for him, because I went into this series utterly blind. I had heard about it, and I avoided it like the plague. Couple of reasons. Main one being, though, normally when a series is that hyped up for me, I mean, I don't know if you've found this before, Gabe, but like when a series is that hyped up, I'm like, I end up reading it and I'm like, why did everybody make such a big deal? No, this was hyped up for a really good reason. So I went in blind, and I am so glad I did. I am so happy, because all of the things that happened throughout this series definitely would not have had as much of an impact, and I would like to try and keep Gabe as virginal in this experience as possible. So if you leave comments, just try not to spoil anything for him, if you don't mind. All right, so what were your, I guess, feelings when I first asked you, hey, do you want to read this book about fairies that is basically a Beauty and the Beast retelling for a good portion of it?
So I don't think I even knew the Beauty and the Beast angle at all when you first recommended it. It just registered in my mind as, a series about fairies. And on top of that, there's just so many fantasy book series out right now. So this one just didn't stick out to me based on the title or based on what anyone was saying.
Okay.
So I would say really what made me go along with this was more just your enthusiasm and your desire to want to go on the journey with me, more than it was the book itself.
Well, I love you for that, because it's so awesome having you on this journey, like just being able to share something I love. I've dragged 2 other people along on this journey with me. So I did not read this series until this time last year. So December 2021, and is the second I got done with the first book. I knew my very good friend Desiree would love this, and so I got her on board, and within like 2 days, Desiree had caught up to like where I was in the second book. She freaked. And then a friend of both of ours, Carrie, she ended up, she read it too. So I'm glad to bring everybody along on the ACOTAR journey. All right. So I guess, let's see, did the beginning of the book grab you? First chapter, setup, what were your thoughts there? Like just the very, very beginning.
I mean, I guess I'll just kind of give you like an overall review, which was, basically the first 2/3 of this book was this Beauty and the Beast retelling, and then the last third was the Under the Mountain sequence, which was almost a separate novella contained within this novel. And they were so tonally different in my mind that I basically, to answer your question, the beginning did not really grab me, and I would say, like, I did kind of have to keep going through those first 2/3 to then get to a really awesome final third. So that's my review of the overall book, that it gets really good in that last third. It's almost... I almost feel like I'm not sure if that last third goes with the first 2/3 because they are so different.
Okay, now this comes back to, I've had to, just a heads up for anybody watching, I've had to spoil a couple of tiny little things for Gabe to reel him in a bit more. Nothing major, but like I've told him, and if you have read this series, I know you will agree, everything the last third of what the first book is what the rest of the series is. That first, I mean, I understand, listen, you can say what you want about Sarah J. Maas, all of you guys. Look, I am a writer, and there are a couple little things she does that make me twitch a bit, but they're on like a line level. Her storytelling ability is beautiful, and my hat goes off to this woman that she did almost this redirect for the first, 2/3 of this book. It's going to be this one thing, and then you get whiplash this way. And then the rest of the series is this, what we just scratched the surface of when we went under the mountain. I will say, because I just want to point out a couple of things from like a writer's standpoint. Her setup for the first chapter for me was just like beautiful. That we got this glimpse into who this character is, her status quo life, that she has to hunt for food. It gave me a little bit of Katniss vibes from like the Hunger Game, right? A little bit. And that she has this family that she has to take care of because pretty much they're useless. They can't do anything. And I think that this author hit the nail on the head with dealing with topics like that. What it's like to be hungry. Like when she gets that deer, she sits there and she goes, okay, well, we can have this and this for this week. And then if we dry the rest, it's going to tie us over until this point. When you are in a situation like that, which I grew up in a really bad, poor situation, your mind does, you don't just look at food as food, you look at it as time. How much time am I going to get out of this piece of meat? Like, am I going to be hungry in 2 more days, or can I stretch it? And maybe I won't be hungry for 4 days. So I have to give Sarah J. Maas props for that part of this book. It was just hit the nail on the head. I think the only thing I'm going to call bullshit on is that Feyre carried the whole dough back to the house. No, bitch, please. No, you did not. Okay.
Well, okay, so that kind of ties into a little bit of why I had a bit of a disconnect at the beginning, because the story starts, it's told in the first person, so right away I was kind of thrown off of what's going on, who is this who's narrating to me. I was just waiting, I don't even know the gender. Who is this person?
I remember you
the name's
saying
Feyre.
that to me, yeah.
And then I don't even know how to pronounce Feyre at first. So that was kind of, it was like, throw me a bone here. Where is this? When is this? What is the historical setting? So even now by the end, I feel like we never really get a description of what Feyre really looks like. So what you're saying about her carrying the dough, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if she's tiny and dainty and petite, or is she large and
I
butch?
think, honestly, I felt the same way you did the first read-through when I did this, when I just read it, last year. And now that I took my time and I'm familiar, I wasn't just flying through the pages just to, like, devour the story. I was just kind of taking my time. Mass has a very subtle way that she will describe the characters. She says it once, that Feyre has golden brown hair, just like all the other two sisters. So then, like, the sisters get described. Well, in essence, then, because of that one little line, we know then
Fair enough.
she's all skin and bones when she gets to the spring court. And honestly, that's my main problem for why she wouldn't carry the dough, is that when you are hungry all the time and you're not getting good nutrition and food, you are weak. Like, yes, adrenaline helps, but you just physically don't have that capability of chucking an 80-pound, even if it's an 80-pound deer. I mean, I move, and I am healthy now. I move 50-pound bags of flour 10 feet, and I'm like, Jesus, oh my God. Like, now dragging a freaking carcass over no, it's not going to happen. Like,
Well, that was another thing. So I knew this was a fantasy series, but in those first few chapters, I was still like, okay, what are the rules of this world?
Yes.
Is this a world where Feyre has powers like Buffy, or is it more grounded in our reality? And that also was not clear in the first few chapters.
No, it took a while for us to get into the magical realm of Perithian, which I needed to say, actually, that video I had sent you last night of Mass, I wanted to make sure, you guys, I wasn't pronouncing her name wrong. I always say Sarah J. Maas, and I was like, is it Moss? People say it's Moss. Well, I found a video where she was introducing this book herself. No, she says Mass. But she... Go ahead.
I just want to say the same thing happened to me with J.K. Rowling. For years, I heard people say, "Oh, it's Rowling.
Yes.
Don't you know it's Rowling?" And then I heard an interview with her where she introduces herself as Jo Rowling. And I'm like, no.
You always have to go
I got it from her
by
mouth.
exactly how they say it. Well, when she introduced herself, she started talking about this book. And she said, I've been working on it for many, many years. And it started off as a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And over the years, it morphed into its own thing. But what I found really interesting is this was several months prior to its publication. It wasn't called Perithian. She called the land Fairy. So when Feyre goes to Fairy, and I was like, I am so glad you changed that.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So I have a question. Is there a significance behind the name Feyre for the protagonist?
I don't think so. The only thing that's ever mentioned, and I believe it was in this book, is that I think Amarantha says it to her, is like, oh, you have an old name. She has like an old world name. But why she got that name or how she got that, like which of her parents named her, I don't know. I don't think we are ever told. You guys correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think like there is any explanation for the name. We had some technical difficulties. We'll fix it. All right, but yes, to answer your question, I don't know the significance behind the name.
Because I definitely would be curious to know, like, when she started writing this, because I read up a little bit on her, and I know that she started writing fan fiction on websites, and that was how she got started as a writer. And so I was looking at, like, variations of the Beauty and the Beast story, and I just wondered, like, if when she started this story out, if there was a significance to the name Feyre as a spin on Belle, or one of the different names the characters had in other tellings.
If you guys, if anybody has the answer to that, like, please let us know, because I'm curious.
Something I found out for the first time, because I don't have that much attachment to the Beauty and the Beast story. Like every everyone of our generation. I know
Yes.
the Disney cartoon, and I'd seen older versions. I know in the original story that we'll just call the character Belle, because she's had different names, but that's kind of the standard name. She's had sisters. What I didn't know was that in the original story, which I was looking up, apparently she had 11 siblings.
Really?
It was six boys and 6 girls. So it's a very fairy tale. And then, like, in different versions, it was changed to, now it's just she has 2 sisters. And then what role those sisters play in the story changes in the different variants. So I've seen some versions where the 2 sisters are very jealous of her, and they play a very manipulative role.
I'm wondering if that's where Nesta comes in.
I mean, I'm guessing. I don't know what happens in book 2 or 3, but I'm excited because I know, okay, there's no set path that the sisters take in the original story. There's so many roles they can take, to the extent that in the Disney version, the sisters don't exist at all. So that's interesting that those characters of the sisters are so malleable.
I agree. And honestly, I think what happened to Mass is probably similar to what happened with me when I worked on my Phantom of the Opera retelling, right? It started off as this heavy retelling. And then, like, all right, well, no, I don't have to go down this road. Why do I have to do that? And I made my own world. And because I made this, it shoots off, and it really is, I can't even say, like, as much as tonally similar the first 2/3 of this book is it has, like, Beauty and the Beast, like, elements. It's not, though. It's more of, like, an inspired type novel. And then, like I have already told you, it was Mass herself who said this. Like, book 2 has slight threads of, like, a Hades and Persephone type retelling. But again, it's not, to use the word retelling isn't accurate. It's more like inspired by.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the word retelling, because retelling implies that, like, oh, we're taking the template of this story and we're putting a new spin on it. Maybe it's a modern spin or something else. And that's really not
that's what
it
she
does.
intended. Like she said, originally it was a Beauty and the Beast, but then it became something else. It became something different. And I mean, like, you haven't even scratched, like, I'm excited for you if you're going to continue on with this series, because you haven't even scratched the surface of this world that she created. And she did. I just, again, like, my hat goes off to her as far as the way she builds characters and just this world building. She has this beautiful world building capability that you really only got to see a little bit of in book 1, and we'll just, the doors get blown off their hinges in the rest of the series, because, we have to, there's all these courts, right? And there's all these different things.
Right.
Like, each High Lord kind of has something a little bit different. Like, Rhys can, I said his name right. Rhys, okay.
Yes.
He can, like, wink out of existence, which there is a name for that you don't know yet. It'll come up in book 2. He's, go ahead.
No, I have some questions, and just for YouTube, just so you know, like, I literally finished reading the book earlier today, so if I'm just a little rusty with remembering some characters' names or how some things went down, and then as soon as Shannon explains it, I go, oh, yeah, that's the reason why. So, Feyre, is she the middle sister?
No, I think Feyre is the youngest. Now you've got me questioning. I think Feyre is the baby.
Well, that would make sense, because in every version of Beauty and the Beast, Belle is the youngest of the sisters. So that would fit in. But I guess that raised questions of, well, why is the youngest in the family the one out hunting and providing
exactly why I'm
for the
pretty
family?
Sure she is the baby, because I remember having that same thought. Like, how does this poor kid get stuck being the one to do? Normally, like, it's, I know with my mother's family, she was the oldest sibling of 4, and was quite a bit older. I mean, the next child, my mom was 8 when her sister was born, and then she was 14 and 16. So a lot of the responsibilities of those, like, my mother raised those kids, but she was the oldest. So yes, it is a little strange that she is the one who stood up and said, well, I got to do something here because nobody else is. But I kind of like that because that goes to show her character. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She was the youngest, and she sat there and looked and said, well, we're dying here. Nobody's willing to do anything. I'm going to stand up and I'm going to have to do something. So I do like that. All right. What did you think when she got to Spring Court? Thoughts, thoughts on the court itself, Tamlin.
That's going to be a running gag. Okay, so going back to what I said before, I didn't know that this was going to be a Beauty and the Beast variant. I guess
Okay.
retelling's not the right word, but let's say variant. So I went in completely blind, and then the first few chapters, Tamlin comes for her and says, you have to go with me to Prythian. And that's when it started to click. Oh, I'm recognizing the story
Gotcha.
beats here. Yeah, okay, she has to stay, and also she has the sick father and sisters back home. Okay, I see where it's going now. So I got a little excited once we got to Prythian because I said, okay, now it's clicking. Now I see where it's going. And I'm interested to learn more about this magic world and who exactly the Fae are. It also maybe didn't excite me because I went, oh, but that means it's going to be a love story with this guy Tamlin, and Tamlin's going to play the role of the Beast, and I don't know if I want to see how that's going to go down. So mixed thoughts on that.
Let me just interject really quickly there. I was all down for that. Like when I first read this, I you know me, Gabe knows me, I love romance. So I was like, yeah, she's going to break the curse and they're going to be together. I don't know how there's 2 more books, but who cares? So like I was 100,000% team Tamlin. I was like, this poor guy, of course he's closed off. Like, look at all of everything he's gone through. And I did warn my friend Carrie, okay, when she read this. I said, there's going to be a shift that happens, right? And she's like, no, there's not. I said, there is. Trust me. There is going to be a major shift. And she's like, no, not at all. And then she ended up sending me a video and she went, damn it, Shannon, the shift is happening. The shift is happening. But yes, no.
I just want to say, you do Carrie's voice perfectly and her inflections perfectly.
Wait, I could share the video with you later. I haven't been wanting to spoil anything for Gabe. But I'm sorry, so go ahead. So you thought it was going to be this, romance and...
No, I guess... so that then leads into the middle act of the book, which... that was where I felt the story started to drift, because I was kind of like, okay, it's a love story, and it's not a particularly new spin on the genre. And for so much of that middle section, Feyre is a very passive character. She's just learning about
everything's
the rules of Prythian, the rules of different courts.
Told to her, yes.
I guess without jumping ahead, it didn't feel like a sense of urgency really entered the plot until just before Under the Mountain, when she talks to Alice. That I would say was where, like, okay, I got invested.
For me, even even reading this the first time, so we've got Rhys who shows up, right? And they try glamoring Feyre, and he goes, "You dare glamour me?" And he grabs her mind, and then Tamlin's like, you have to go. I can't keep you here. And he sends her away. But it was kind of like, I don't know, we still didn't have that urgency. For me, it wasn't until she got back to the Spring Court and the shit was destroyed and Alice was there, and then all of this stuff started coming out, and it was like, oh my God, like, okay, like this is what's really been going on. And this has been kept from her.
And something I just want to share with the YouTube audience is, originally Shannon and I thought of doing this little conversation like a third into the book, and then later halfway through the book, and then ultimately it just ended up being now when I finished book 1. And I'm really grateful that it worked out this way, because I really think if we had done it at the halfway point, I would not have had much to say. I would have said, a lot's happened, but I'm not absorbing it.
I felt that with this reread for it, and honestly, here's why. Because I have already experienced the shift. So the first time I read this as a girl and somebody who is totally romantic, I was turning those pages just for the romance. Like, when are they going to get together? Like, when's the mask going to come off? That's probably the phantom lover in me, right? Like, even just that alone.
That's exactly it.
That alone was enough. But then as I was reading it this time, I'm like, I was really trying to absorb it more as like a writer and a storyteller. And I'm like, okay, well, there's not like, it gets to a point where, okay, yeah, she's in the spring court and she's like, everything's new. But then it kind of gets a little stagnant. For me as a second time reader, and this is nothing bad against Sarah J. Maas, I firmly believe she had to take this a little bit slower to have some of the things that happen, not only at the end of this book, but in the following books, have more impact. We needed that breath to kind of sit back and go, all right, well, now we're just kind of living daily life. We need to see the daily life so other things then kind of punch you when they happen.
Yeah, I can see that. And yeah, I would say like the payoff was worth it. For this book, and I could definitely see like it having more payoff in the next two books.
Let's jump ahead toward, because we haven't talked about this yet, YouTube. Let's talk about like her trials and that last third of the book that we both really, really enjoyed. So, what'd you think? Like when she got under the mountain and Feyre doesn't listen, does she? Don't drink the wine. Don't make deals. Don't believe anything anybody tells you. And she does it all. She like breaks every one of the things Alice told her. Don't do that, and she does. But like, I guess, yeah, just your overall thoughts on that under the mountain section.
I love the under the mountain section. Like I said, it felt like it felt like a separate novella within the novel. So I was starting a new story once that segment started. Now, I mentioned not having that much of a connection to Beauty and the Beast, but I love Hans Christian Andersen, specifically Little Mermaid and The Snow Queen and a few others. Everything Under the Mountain was very Hans Christian Andersen. The character of Amarantha.
Wait, you're gonna have me say it wrong now. Amarantha.
Okay, folks. Again, I finished the book earlier today.
Listen, he's got an excuse. I don't have an excuse because I still just. I don't care. Listen, I'm trying to say it right for you guys and out of respect for Sarah J. Maas, because I am a writer and it would crush my soul if people mispronounced my characters' names. But Rhysand? I will never read that name as Rhysand. It is Rhysand. I can't help it. I'm going to try and say Rhysand, but just so we're aware, that might not happen all the time.
Well, I mean, I was pronouncing it Rhysand at first until you told me you thought Kyle Reese from the Terminator, but
that's how I've been remembering it.
What I've said before, and I've said this to you, is like in a fantasy story where you have characters with fantastical names and places have fantastical names, readers are going to mispronounce stuff. And yeah, sometimes the book has a little glossary in the back, but not every reader looks at that. So, you know, it's just a given. Like, before Game of Thrones became a TV show, everyone was mispronouncing those characters' names.
I can only imagine. Absolutely. Yeah. Like those spellings, like, Yes. I think one of, at least, Sarah J. Maas does not do this, but I have seen this, people be guilty of this when I've read other fantasies. And, what is it, Jenna Moretti? I think you watched Jenna, right?
Yeah, okay, I like her.
She had a video that was just hysterical. It's one of her older videos, but like what not to do when writing a fantasy. And she's like, why can't we just have like a Bob? Why does Bob get fucked out of not being in the fantasy? She's like, no, we do the keyboard smash. Just start smashing letters and make sure an X.
I've seen that video.
Make sure an X and a Z is in there, because if it's not a fantasy name. But it's
and at least 3 apostrophes.
Yes. But it was great because she's being dramatic, but it's true. Like some of these fantasies that I have read that I'm like, what's my name at this point? Like, I don't even know.
Okay, so Amarantha, did I say it right?
Amarantha, I think.
Amarantha. Okay, so she was awesome. That was like a pure Hans Christian Andersen villain, and the entire setup of, okay, you have 3 tasks or a riddle, whichever one you solve first.
Yes.
So I was all like, I'm strap me in, however the expression goes. Then the character of Rhys starts to get more development in that section, and you realize, okay, this guy isn't just a henchman for Amarantha, which is what I thought he was at first.
Yes, me too.
This guy has his own agenda, and he's interesting. So I'll answer one of your other questions right now. Rhys is my favorite character in the whole book.
This is why you're my best friend, because you just have impeccable taste. He's my favorite character as well. Him, and then I know I'm going to get a lot of hate for this, but I'm going to say it. Nesta, later on in the series. I know everybody seems to hate Nesta because she's just vile, but I like Nesta.
With Rhys, I was getting Snape vibes from
Harry
Potter.
100%, absolutely. I felt the same way when I was first reading it, and let me tell you something. When I first got Under the Mountain on my first read through, I was like, oh, no, I can see where Maas is going with this. Like, he started to change, and Feyre's feelings towards him changed, but I was so firmly Team Tamlin that I was like, don't look at him like that. He just licked your face. Like, slap him. But I couldn't, as much as I wanted to fight not liking that character because I felt loyal to somebody else, I couldn't help it. I liked that character, and I think for me, what absolutely won me over, 2 things. That second trial, when she's about to break.
Yeah.
And he gets into her head, and he's like, stand up, chin up, good girl. Don't let them see you cry. Wait until you get back to your cell. The fact that I was like, oh, all right, I like that. And then at the very end, when she's like, why'd you do that? And he's like, because I didn't want you to die alone. And I was like, oh man, okay, you're a dick, but I like you.
I think, and this could be a whole other topic, but in so many of these stories that we love, there is that character who, like, if you look at them realistically, they are a toxic or problematic person, but it's like, as a character, we like them.
Yes.
And so both of us like Buffy, and you could say that's true of both Angel and Spike.
Absolutely. Yes. Like
that those are toxic relationships.
If we were Buffy's friends, we would be like, girl, no, like, run. But yes, in a fictional sense, they just work really, really, really well. And I think what helps too is when you have, like, whether it's the creators of a show like Buffy, who, they gave Spike and Angel. We won't get off topic and do too much Buffy here, people. But like, they gave those characters a good backstory and a solid reason for why they are the way they are. And Maas does the same thing for all of these characters. Even Amarantha, who kind of seems one note at first, but then you remember, what she went, like, what happened. And why she hates humans. And it's like, all right, you're still a crazy bitch, But like, I get why you feel this way. I can somewhat understand. And to me, those are the best like villains that we can just, even if we're like, nah, I don't think I'd ever do that, but maybe if like that situation happens, those are the ones that are the best. And then like we spoke about off here, like the morally gray characters, they're great.
Right. So then as far as the challenges, so the first challenge was great. That was very like a classic like Indiana Jones style, like get out of what do you call it? Like
it was like
she's up against a creature.
She wasn't in catacombs, but like this fantastical creature that you're running this way and that way from, and
Or I guess going back to Harry Potter with like the Triwizard Tournament in the first competition, it's he has to tame the dragon. Yeah. So it's like the most traditional of the three. And then before we get to the second challenge, the whole thing with Rhys happens where we learn, for lack of a better term, that he's roofing her and then taking her out in public and violating her. And I know, like, they explain, it's not sexual, but I mean, the subtext is there. It's rape.
Okay, but here's the thing. He's got the paint on her, right? So she can see wherever he touches. And she makes a point of saying the only part of her that's ever touched is right on her waist. So I think that was Mass's way as a writer to go, don't hate him. He's not like getting fingery and handsy. He's just like, it's a thing for show. And it's a thing that you have all of these other high lords, these creatures that are deadly to a human, where he claimed ownership on her. Don't touch her. She's mine, and I'm showing you she's mine. But, like, he also really didn't touch her either. Because, you guys, I got a text message from Gabe when he was reading, and he was like, what the fuck? He's like, Feyre's just got roofied. But I can so see that, yes.
Well, because I'm just saying, this is not a YA book at all. Even though it was somehow marketed that way.
I know, I agree. I so agree. Listen, if I could get away as a debut author with this kind of stuff in young adult, I would have zero need to ever write an adult book. I mean, it's got everything that, for me, I have rules I have to follow as a debut author, and all of them, like, I have to write an adult book to get the same content in it. So, but I don't care. She did love this book, and it's not her fault. It got marketed as a young adult, but I agree with you 100%. Yeah, should not have been young adult.
And another series I like, which I know you haven't read, Shannon, is Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson. And I would say, like, that's more YA or middle grade than this is.
Okay.
In terms of, I would say, like, book one has more accessibility to a younger audience.
Okay, I gotcha.
And by the way, this isn't a criticism of the book. It's fine that it's not YA. Yes. I'm just saying, like, it's definitely not.
No. Yeah. There's a lot of heavy shit. And the second book just, like, if you were all questioning, like, book one, like, oh, maybe it's on the cusp, like, book two, no, it's an adult book.
So then the second challenge happens, and this is the one where she has to read a clue, but she's illiterate, so she has to pick one of the three levers, and basically Rhys helps her cheat.
Yes.
And when I read that, I wasn't sure how I felt about that. I went, oh, like, she didn't really earn this victory, but I'm going to see where this goes. And I ended up kind of liking it.
Okay.
Because it actually made me like Rhys.
Yes.
And it made me intrigued to see where is this going to go, not knowing he has his own motive.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the second challenge, overall, I ended up liking it after I digested it.
Yeah, that to me, like I said, that it wasn't even that Rhys helped her for me. It was that right after when she's like, she put her hands in her, and she was going to break, and she said it like, against my will, my body, my back straightened, and I stood, and my face was dry of tears, and he was like, chin up, just let the crowd part. Good girl, go to your room and cry. Like, don't let her see that you're gonna break. And I was like, oh man, like, and Tamlin won't even talk to her.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, Tamlin, it's like, he has so little personality in general, but then in the last third, he's literally silent.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, it's hard to build a connection towards him.
Okay, the only thing I'm gonna say, like, without, really spoiling anything, is that, and I think we had talked about this privately, something I appreciate that Mass did is, she treats these fantastical scenarios as something real, with, like, how you would feel emotionally. So let's, like, be just straight up honest. If you or I were trapped under the mountain for 50 years, like Rhys, who was her bitch, I mean, he was honest, like, seriously, he was, and he was doing, like, he had to serve in her bedroom, and he didn't want to. That's rape. I mean, it is, you know, it's, and everything else, you are not going to come out of that situation and be psychologically sound. So then we have Tamlin, who is in love with Feyre, and watched her die. Watched her neck get snapped. And his character, I know people, don't spoil anything, but, like, we know we don't like some of the shit he does in book 2, but it also makes him more interesting because he is now dealing with trauma from under the mountain, and Feyre now is dealing not only with the trauma of killing those fairies, but of this, she has this new body, she has these new powers, and it's really book 2 is, it's where it's at, bitches. But so I you know, I don't know. I really enjoy all of the aspects that Mass gave these characters because you might not get them at first, like the complexities, but as it goes on, Tampon will be a little bit more complex. A little.
The fact you keep calling him by that name tells me even you don't like him.
No. All right. Honestly, it's the fandom that calls him that because when we go to write the name, normally autocorrect will change it to Tampon from Tamlin, and it just stuck. No, actually, surprisingly, again, unpopular opinion. Sorry, you guys. Just like I like Nesta, I feel really bad for Tamlin, and I'm just gonna leave it at that for now. But no, most people don't like him. I, however, do, and I can see why he does the things he does. He's just not the High Lord of the Night Court.
Okay. Yeah, that's accurate.
For me, anyway. So, yeah. All right. So, that third trial. Well, actually, you said after the second trial you liked Rhys, so I guess let's segue into the third trial.
Yes. Right. Okay. The third trial. I'm going to be a roller coaster on this. Okay. So the third trial starts, and she's told she has to kill these 3 people, and then the 3 people are brought out, and they have bags on their heads. And my first thought was, it's going to be her father and 2 sisters. Oh, that would be that would be crazy. And then it wasn't that. And you see, like it's. The first 2 are these random fairies. Do you say fairies or fae?
I say fairy. Okay. Well, they were fair. Well, she wrote fairies in that part of the book, I believe.
So then I think, it's going to be the traditional thing of our heroine cannot commit murder, so she will, instead of doing this, something will happen. She'll solve the riddle, whatever. No, she murders the first one in cold blood.
Stabs her right in the fucking heart. Yeah.
I did not see that coming.
No, I didn't either. I honestly, that's genius. Like having the father and the sisters, that would have been fantastic. But I didn't even think of that. But I was like, oh, she can't do this. Like she's not going to do this. And I was like, she just did this.
So then she goes, and this shows you how fucked up I am because now when she gets to the second person. And again, she's like, oh, I'm conflicted. Should I do it? And I'm like, no, murder again. You did it once. I want you to keep going.
You already fucking did it. Like, what the hell? I mean, in all fairness, though, let's like really talk about what is at stake here. It's the human realm and, Parithi.
And I am glad that Mass added that element, because if it was, she was just doing this for Tamlin, then that...
No, it would have been...
We wouldn't have been on her side.
That's irredeemable then. Yeah, no, you can't. I mean, as it was kind of like, oh shit, bitch is serious. Like, don't fuck with her. But you understand, because you have to sit there and you go, well, it's 2 lives to save God knows how many it's what leaders today do and have to take. When you put men out into a battlefield, you have to say, okay, we know that this battalion is going to get lost, that we're losing all of these guys, but they could potentially win the war by losing these men. Are they worth the loss? And it's a really shitty situation and spot to be put in. And yeah, she did it, man. She fucking stabbed them right in the heart.
So then she comes to the third person, and it's revealed that it's Tamlin. And, okay, my opinion on this may change on a reread, but that she's able to figure out he has a heart of stone, it was based on, 2 vague memories that she randomly overheard, which...
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that was really set up properly, and
No, I think if you had if this was my book, and you read this for me, all the help you've given, you guys, he reads my novels for me and helps. But if you had read this for me, I think you would have been like, Shannon, you need to drop some more clues along the way so that this hits home. Because I agree with you, she needed maybe 2 more instances of some kind of reference to it.
And I'm someone when I give criticism, I always try to think of how I could have improved something, or I try to be constructive. So what occurred to me was it would have been so easy for her to have added a scene of just Feyre and Tamlin together, some part in the middle of the book, where she says, "Oh, I noticed you don't have a heartbeat," and he gives some sort of explanation. He doesn't have to say, "I have a heart of stone," but something a little more substantive that she then connects the dots.
That would have been the easiest, best fix for just, because I felt the same way even on my reread.
Okay.
Even on my reread, I was like, but again, this time I was really trying to study the book for story structure and character and pacing and everything that I didn't the first time around. But I was like, wait, this is really it's like we jumped. We went from A to C, but we didn't have B to smooth over. So I agree with you there.
So that's the first part where I call a little bit BS. But then comes the part where I call major BS. And that is Amarantha comes down, and at the last minute, Feyre solves the riddle. I don't buy that.
I honestly buy solving the riddle in a situation like that, but I don't buy the way Mass played it out. And somebody needed to have said something that directly tied into that riddle and the answer to it for her brain to go click, click. Okay, I get it. But it was more of this internalization, she realizes I love Tamlin, and then all of a sudden it was oh, love. The answer is love.
Yeah.
So I agree with you there. I'm not even going to front. I did not know the answer to that riddle.
I didn't either.
You didn't. My friend Desiree, you're just too smart for your own good. But immediately when I said, did you get? She immediately knew the answer to the riddle, and I was like, okay.
I guess I feel the way it was played out is when she first arrives, she's told the riddle in full, and it's a long riddle, and my reaction was kind of okay, this is so dense with exposition, I'm not even gonna try to memorize this, so I just kept going.
Yeah.
And then it felt like Feyre, she ends up spending 3 months total. Is it?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
So in the course of 3 months, she barely even thinks about the riddle. She's like, oh my god, I can't even remember that. She's so focused on other things. And at that last moment when she's in that fight, suddenly she remembers the riddle in full when she hadn't thought about it in 3 months.
Well, one of the things that, like, again, this is like one of those throwaway lines that I know you and Carrie on my books would say you need more than this. There is a line in there. There might be two lines, but it's so tiny where, like, it says that, like, Feyre is like, I've thought about it so many times now, and I still can't even contemplate what the answer would be. So she's replayed the riddle in her head so many, but we get like one mention of that. And then you're right. Everything else is going on so that by the time we do get to, it's like, how did you even remember it? Because we only had that one throwaway line where we're told, oh, she's been thinking about it nonstop. And again, that comes back to like one of the rules of, good writing versus bad is you want to always show, not tell. So if there had been one little scene where like Feyre was banging her head against the wall because she's internally just rehashing this riddle instead of us being told in one sentence, it would have made more of an impact.
And like I get from a storytelling standpoint, it made sense to make it a very long riddle because if it had been something like really short, then maybe the reader would have figured it out right away, or it would have gotten burned in our brains. But the downside to making it such a long riddle is that it ends up being more complicated and more convoluted so that you don't really remember it that well. And it doesn't feel as much of a payoff. So I understand the position that Mass was in. And it is like, you probably would have gotten criticized either way. So I get it.
Yeah, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I will say that as soon as she said the answer, love, I went back, my first read through, I went back to where we got the riddle in its entirety. And I was like, oh, yeah. As soon as I went back and reread it in its entirety, because I was still like, wait a minute, how is it? Even still, when she goes love, the answer is love, I was like, it is? Like, because we only get little snippets of it again, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. When she's sitting there getting beaten to death. So I went back and I was like, yeah, it is. Like, I was questioning the author for a minute, like she gave the wrong answer or something. But then it's one of those things that as soon as you know the answer to, you're like, yeah, all right, I see it.
So then...
Go ahead.
So then after that, Feyre dies, and after temporarily being, I guess... or possessing Rhys's body, she's then, reborn or revived as a Fae. I don't know what the correct term is.
I don't know. I guess she's kind of reborn because her body changes and everything.
Okay, so we're doing full-on resurrection trope here. So I know one of the questions you had was, is it a good thing that... Tamlin and the others did this for her? Is it good that she's a Fae now? And I guess, since I don't know what the long-term effects of this are going to be, for right now, my answer is yes. They felt they didn't want her to die. They wanted to save her. This was a way to save her. And there apparently, as of now, is no downside to it. So, I'm guessing that in books 2 and 3, we're going to find out there's more to her new body or her new... life rules that she's going to struggle with.
Yes, and like I've told you before, Mass likes to constantly level up. Like a video game, you know what I mean? Where you're shit gets leveled up all the time. And part of that is this new body and these new abilities. She got a little kernel of power from every court. So shit gets good. I just gotta, say that. And I think what I remember too when I first read it, just kind of being like that whole scene where she was like being killed. And I'm like, well, I know there's other books, so she's not going to die. But, like, she is getting, like, she's bad off. Like, what is going to happen? I remember being so angry at Tamlin. And I know, like, there's a little throwaway line again that, like, after she stabbed him, he was kind of still weak. But I'm like, the freaking devil, because I still was, I mean, I liked Rhys, but I was still firmly Team Tamlin, you know? I was like, the devil is trying to kill Amarantha and is screaming her name. And at one point she says, you know, Rhys screams my name as though he cares. And it just, like, I could hear it. And I'm like, this son of a bitch, he's, like, still on the floor. Get up. Like, what are you doing? He's pleading. He's begging, no, don't do this. And I'm like, fucking get up and do something. Like, the devil's doing shit and you're not. So that made me like Rhys more, too. That, like, he at least tried to do something.
Yeah.
Nobody else fucking did. And then he says that later on when she goes, why? And he goes, because when the history books are written, I don't want to stand on the, you know, on the sidelines, and I didn't want you to be alone. And I, you know, that was it. That sealed it for me personally. I was like, okay, I need more of you in the next books, please and thank you, because you're an awesome character.
I agree with everything, and man, just Amarantha sucks. Just the fact that Feyre successfully solves all the challenges, and after that she's like, oh, well, I said I'd free you, but I didn't say when. That was just like, oh, you're such a petty bitch.
You are such a twat. I'm saying it. Sorry, but you are. Yes.
And even the people in the audience are saying the same thing of like, yo, you're
like,
being unfair now.
It's not fair play.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's not fair play. What are you doing? And yeah, no, she was a really great villain, and I feel like that character worked for exactly every reason it needed to work in that section of the book. She did her job. I mean, I wouldn't have minded if we would have even gotten a little bit more depth to her, but I don't feel like it had to be. Like,
yeah.
I think she was just, I think you would have screwed up the pacing and everything else if you would have had more of a backstory for her. Her backstory works. It makes her so she's just not, you know, she is a person. We can relate somewhat. Although I don't know, that shit with the ring and the eye, I was like, oh my god, like she's making sure she's holding it up so he can see.
That was cool. I like that.
It was cool.
Yeah.
It was so cool. But it just, I'm like, wow, she's like unhinged. Like that's like taking a serial killer and then giving them like magical abilities to keep the soul alive of the person they tortured and killed. I was all for that. Yeah. I mean, but it was one of those things that made me realize like she's crazy. Like dangerously crazy.
No, dude, if magic and supernatural stuff was real, like people would be doing shit like
that shit. Are you kidding me? Absolutely.
No.
100%.
Like as much as I like Harry Potter, like that was something people say, like if teenagers like had magical abilities, they wouldn't be going to school and doing their homework assignments. They'd be doing The Craft is a more realistic depiction of what teenagers would do.
Yes. Yes. I guess too, like part of the thing with creating a fantasy world when you are a writer is, and I found this when I did my Magic of the Night series, is you have to have rules.
Yes.
Because when you have magic, then there's no conflict. Everything. All right. Okay. Sorry, guys. We had a little slight technical difficulty again. So anyway, we are going to try and now wrap this up as succinctly as possible. So, all right. What are your just thoughts on the end of this book? Like, did it make you excited? Do you want to read the rest of the series, or at least book 2? Did you feel like it had a satisfying conclusion?
I absolutely want to read books 2 and 3. I would say, I'm guessing that when Mass published this book, she knew she was going to get sequels, because it does feel pretty,
I
clear.
would have to say she probably sold it as a trilogy. Yeah, she was already published, so, you know, it's a lot easier to get a deal at, you know, as a 3-book deal versus a debut author who has no sales records. So, yeah, I would say so.
Because, yeah, it very much feels like this is the end of a chapter and a climax happened in this part of the story, but the story itself is not over. and I definitely want to learn more about. I guess now she's going to be with Tamlin, and definitely the two sisters. The little that they were in this book, they left an impact, and you remember them. But I do feel like more is going to happen with them.
Yes, I'm not, again, I don't want to spoil anything. You are along the right tracks there. You're gonna have to wait a little bit for that, but yes. Are you excited for the week every month in the Night Court to see what that's like? A different court. No, just to see the different court. I mean, we could make it a sexual, like, innuendo there, but I meant, like, just to get out of the fucking spring court. With tampon.
Yeah, no, I am excited to see the other courts, particularly the autumn court, because the person we met from there, I think she was just called the Lady of Autumn Court. I don't think she had a name, but she was a cool character, and I wanted to know more about her.
And Lucian's brothers are assholes. So yes,
and they were mentioned in passing in a story. When we heard a bit about Lucian. Yes. So I can see that. Yes,
and they were there under the mountain too. Like they were not, they were just like standing back and like, oh, if he's gonna die, he's gonna die. It's like, that's your brother, you peckerhead.
Yeah.
Or peckerheads, plural. So, okay. I think, let's see if there's one last thing. What'd you make of Rhys stumbling at the end? Did you like when they were out on the balcony talking, he starts going into shadow and something he sees on her face makes him stumble. Mr. I'm graceful and I'm like, all invisible flecks of dust.
I did notice that. Yeah. Mass made a point of mentioning something like that, and then, Feyre looks up and then he disappears. But I guess because it was like the next to last page of the book, I guess I was more focused on like, what's going to happen next? Right. Okay, it's ending.
No. All right, that's fine. Like, that's something I would just, like a little kernel to hold in the back of your brain for when you go into book 2. Because this man is graceful, everything he does is with a purpose, and he fucking stumbles. Like, So, maybe as you start reading book 2, go, what would have perturbed him so?
Well, so I'd like to ask you, Shannon, so when you finished book 1, what were your thoughts?
I could not wait to get to book 2. That was my main thing, because I was like, oh my God, she's got these powers now. And I want to see what that's going to be like from a human's point of view. Like, what is this going to be like for her? And I honestly was I was still like 100% Team Tamlin. And I'm like, I hope they can make it through this. I hope like Under the Mountain doesn't crush them. So the first, probably, if memory serves, like, I would say 6 chapters of book 2, I was like eating up, and then I got really, really fucking pissed. And now it's going to be the opposite for me. Now it's going to be like, I just got to get through these 6 chapters in book 2, and then like, I'm going to be okay. Like, it's totally opposite, this read through for me. But yeah, when I finished, I was so grateful that I had the second book available. And that is the book, I believe I've said this to you already, for me, that it's been at least a decade where I couldn't put it down. Cooking even, I had the iPad up on the toaster and I was reading because I was just like, oh my God, like, this is getting real. So I mean, that's the one thing I remember finishing the first book was like, I'm so happy I have book 2 because I want to start it right now.
So book 2 is very unputdownable.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Yes. I mean, book 3 is great as well, but for me, and I think you will find most of the fandom, book 2 is where it's at. Like that's where we get like the real story, and we're like, okay, these are the people we're supposed to root for. These are all the little things that are gonna add up to a bigger whole. And we get the payoff in book 3 of all those things, but it's all of those little things that's the build up where it's brilliant. What she did is just like brilliant. And we'll talk about it when you get through book 2, but like you're going to see what I'm talking about, how there were little things in book 1 that I didn't double glance at when I read for the first time. I know you didn't, but are so meaningful that it's like she's a genius. Like,
so in addition to the main trilogy, I know there's a novella and then there's another book after that.
Yes.
And do you like those? Do you recommend those as well?
I do. Yeah, I absolutely do. The novella is almost like, and I don't want, like, I really enjoyed it, but so I don't want to like put it down in any way, but the best way I can like describe it to you is like a Hallmark Christmas movie. Like, okay, like where we get, because they have like their holiday, their Christmas, and we kind of get to go through it. And I would say a lot of people are like, oh, skip the novella, just go straight to Nesta's book. But there is something that happens in Feyre's point of view in the novella that is paramount to the entire story, pretty much, of what's going on in Nesta's book.
Right.
Can you skip it? Sure. But, like, you're not there for this pivotal decision Feyre makes. And I feel like you should be in her head with this decision she makes in the novella. So even though we're not in her head in that 5th book, which is Nesta's story, we're still following this decision she made in the novella, Feyre. Because we're just seeing it through Nesta's eyes. And I loved, I really enjoyed them. I will say that Silver Flames, Nesta's story, was the one that took me the longest to get through. And I think I just had to shift my brain because I was so used to, at that point, I had just come off books 2 and 3, and the novella was so tiny, it didn't matter. But, and I was so used to one thing after the other, after the other, after the other happening, that Nesta's story isn't like that for the first half of the book. It's really more of like, we dive into the character. Why she act the way she does? What is she doing? So there is plot to it, but out of all of the books, it's the one that's plot light.
Got it.
Where the other ones aren't. But I like character stories. So I didn't have, it's just my brain was kind of like, wait, when is something going to happen? And I was taking for granted that a lot is happening inside Nesta. It's her story. It's her. And she has probably one of the most beautiful character arcs I think I've ever read. But it took a while to like get there. And I just was like, and Carrie even, she still hasn't finished it because she's all about plot. And she's like, nothing is happening. No. There are things happening. It's just a different kind of than what you're used to with the rest of the series. So, yeah, I would recommend all of the books. I just didn't want to overwhelm you when I asked you to do this in the first place.
I think one last thing is, I think when I'd always heard about this series, I had, like, the cliche of a fairy is, like, a little, like, Tinkerbell-sized creature.
Me too.
And so that's what I just assumed it was until I started this. So I thought, oh, it's going to be little tiny fairies fucking each other.
And I'm not into fairies. Yeah. Yes. Fairy porn is what a lot of people call this series, right? And I was like, I don't like with the little wings and shit. I was like, no. And I think like Mass turns that on its side. Like these are almost like X-Men. Like, they have these different powers and,
Well, it's... Because the term male fairy has another implication. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
So it's like she's challenging our idea of what this is, just like, Anne Rice challenged our idea of what a vampire is.
Yes.
And all that.
Yeah. And I think it's probably one of the reasons it's worked so well. And stands out from the other Fae stories.
So yeah, I guess I'll just wrap this up by saying that the Fae in this story, they are definitely not Tinkerbell.
No, they would tear Tinkerbell a new ass. So yes, I agree. I agree. I'm really glad that you enjoyed it. I can't wait to get into book 2 with you because I will be rereading that with you. And then book 2 is larger, and there is so much going on that YouTube, we might end up splitting book 2 in half. Or who knows what, you know.
We'll figure it out. Like, it depends on if we have tech issues again, but I'm sure we'll figure it out.
We'll figure it out, but you haven't heard The Last of Us and our, what Gabe beautifully named Cauldron Talk. We should have started with that. Hi, welcome to Cauldron Talk. We'll do it with that.
I hope you enjoyed Cauldron Talk, everyone.
Yes, don't forget to please subscribe and click the little bell if you'd like notifications. All right, we will catch you later.
Bye.
Bye.